Hey everyone, GG here. I've been meaning to put together this Tina guide for a really long time, and I've been putting it off like upwards of 9 months now since I started working on it. And I decided, you know what, today's the day that I go ahead and record it. So as of time of recording, it is January 4th, and the current patch is from December 25th, 2025. So we're this game is in development. Things change a lot, so just keep that in mind as you're watching the guide. I probably will not update it until at least Steam release, unless the character gets like a massive rework. So a few of my qualifications for why you should care about my Tina guide. I'm the person who originally wrote the Tina doc, for those of you who are in the Discord. When I started labbing at this character, she didn't really have any serious players at the time, so I pretty much had to develop her meta on my own, combo routing, pressure structures, management, all that stuff. So, you know, not to toot my own horn, but I put a lot of effort into developing this character's meta, and I just wanted to share because I think she's one of the coolest characters that's ever been put into a fighting game. So anyway, let's get started. First of all, why would you potentially be interested in playing Tina? She is one of the most diabolical zoners ever put into a fighting game. And I like to compare her to like the likes of Hilda, New 13, like those type of evil characters that are just putting massive hitboxes on the screen and creating these insane puzzles for their opponent to navigate. So if you're really into zoners, if you're really into that type of very like projectile spammy zoners, Tina is that. If you're into meter management, Tina is a really cool meter management character. She has this resource that you can see at the bottom left of the screen that she can spend for enhanced moves, and you're really rewarded for paying attention to and carefully managing that resource. So for those of you who like, you know, technical resource management, Tina might be for you for that reason. And of course, probably the reason most of you would pick Tina in the first place, she's super cute. The number of people that I've convinced to try this game by just showing them Tina and how much I like her character design, that's enough. And for many people, that's a good enough reason to pick a character as any. So I got a lot of respect for you. That's the reason I originally picked Tina, but I've also been a zoner head for years, so that lined up nicely for me. So getting into her game plan, as I mentioned before, the most important thing that you need to know about Tina is how her Q bar works. So that's that gauge you see at the bottom left, right above the action points. And the main thing that it does is it allows her to enhance her normals. So a lot of her normals have a non-enhanced and an enhanced version. And typically the way that you access the enhanced version is by holding forward when you do the move. So for example, 5C doesn't go that far, 6C goes super far, but it spends 1 pip of that cute bar. So she's got a lot of really ridiculous normals that cost cuteness, and then she has to refill it in order to access those really strong normals. So there's a few ways to refill the bar. The first one is by eating. She's got 2 different eat moves. So 214B is a very slow one that gives her a full bar. And then 214A only refills 3 pips of the bar, but it's much faster. 214A is definitely the more accessible of the moves. Generally 214B is like sometimes during combos. And then the last way that she really has to refill it is with her sweep. So her 2D drops a bunch of food on the ground, and each of these foods that you pick up will restore 1 pip. So there I picked up 1 as soon as I knocked her down, and there's 3 more, and if I step on them, I get additional pips. That's really strong because you can combo route into those and then not have to eat so that you get better Oki. So those are the main things, but Tina also has like a few different other ways to use cuteness. So for instance, everyone in this game gets their jump and then their double jump, but Tina can actually spend half a pip to just keep jumping. It's worth noting that this also decreases the risk gauge, but it really lets you like bait anti-airs in an interesting way, and she can also do the same thing with her single air dash. So you get one free air dash, and if you want, you can keep air dashing for as long as you have cuteness. This leads to some really funny situations where your opponent might be coming at you and you just bam and then air throw them. But for the most part, the main thing you're going to be spending that cuteness on is the enhanced normals. One other really important thing to note about managing the cute gauge is that when you eat, you get meter. It only works if you're actually restoring the cute gauge though. So as you can see, right, if I have 2 bars missing of cute gauge and I eat, I get a little bit of meter. But if I'm already full and I eat, I don't get anything. So because of this, Tina actually has some of the best meter generation in the game. And if your opponent just kind of passively lets you throw out normals and then get your cuteness back, you can build up a ton of meter really quick. Like just that little sequence got me almost a bar and a half. So it's something to be mindful of when you're playing against Tina, and it's definitely something to care about a lot when you're Tina, because you can then use that meter to help you get your cuteness back. It's also super relevant because Tina has these like super high meter generation combos where she can spend her cuteness and just build up like 2.5 bars over the course of the combo, and then spend it to cash out for a super. So she's one of the few characters that can literally have 0 meter, hit you with a combo starter, and then end that combo in a super. It's very strong, and it makes her corner damage like insanely good. Tina's other unique mechanic is unrecoverable chip damage. So she just like has unrecoverable chip on most of her normals, and it allows you to progress the game in a way that a lot of other characters don't have access to, because she can just really chip away your health. Like if I just spend a full bar on 6C, I did like 10% of the opponent's health just from spamming one normal. That's plus on block. So it really means that you don't necessarily have to mix your opponent, which is good because Tina does not have good mix. It's not bad by anime game. Well, it's not bad, but compared to basically anyone else in the cast, she's gonna have the most difficulty opening up opponents. Free did kind of throw us a bone, which is that she has some more potent strike throw than you would think, given how kind of slow her ground movement is. And that is her throw range is huge. As you can see, I'm pretty far away. Like, here's just the edge of the range, and most characters are not throwing from here, but Tina is. So that absolutely goes for her air throw as well, and really lets you kind of get away with murder. And one of the funny things, let me make Tina start jumping so you can see the air throw. One of the funny things is Tina, like many characters in this game, gets a whole combo off of air throw. So it really does reward you for being able to air throw opponents, which is interesting because depending on the range, that is often your best anti-air option. So for those of you who like fiending for air throws, myself included, I love fiending for air throws. It's really good. Okay, so I am going to start by talking about her neutral game. I think I'm just gonna mostly go over her moves as they come up while I'm discussing her gameplay. So we're gonna go ahead and start by talking about her neutral. Absolutely the cornerstone of Tina's neutral is this move, 6C. As you can see, it's ridiculously fast. It's plus on block. It does chip damage. It's an insane combo starter. And it hits nearly full screen. The only disadvantage of it really being that it costs cuteness. So this is one of the most spammable moves in the game, and if you're playing against someone who doesn't have a lot of experience in the matchup, they're just gonna get steamrolled by this one move. The number of times I have played against someone who's never fought Tina before, and they literally just send me the message of, how do I deal with that move? And I immediately know which one they're talking about because this move is ridiculous. That being said, it's not as spammable as it might seem, and there's definitely ways to interact with it. So the first thing to note is, even though it's plus, there's a sizable gap between the first and second hit if you spam it twice in a row, and your opponent can absolutely fatal through that with like basically any fatal option. Especially characters that have really threatening full screen fatal options, you need to be super careful about that. But it's always going to vary a little bit matchup to matchup what people are doing to get through this. So you don't want to do this too predictably, but your opponent can't just throw out fatal options too predictably either, because of course if I do this and my opponent always immediately responds with a fatal, I can just parry it. And for those of you who don't know, parrying fatal options is really strong. So just something to be aware of. That's kind of like the Easlaffy system mechanics way to get through. The other thing is a lot of characters can low profile this. So like Tay in particular, depending on the range, Qdora can low profile this. And you need to be super, super aware of that. And then, kind of the most obvious option, characters that have a good air dash or good jump-ins can just air dash over it. Now, Tina, of course, has ways to deal with all of these options. So, first of all, if they're going low profile, I mean, you can do nothing. You can just parry it. You also have your 2B/3B, so the enhanced and unenhanced versions. This is basically Tina's only low in her kit as well, so that's something to be aware of. If your opponent starts trying to low profile their way in, you can start mixing in these. And as of, well, it's not that recent of a patch anymore, but as of a while ago, you can also get a combo starter off of 3D. So I'll set the dummy to not block again. And if you land 3D, as you can see, I got a little combo there. It's a little finicky, and you need the clean hit, but on counter hit, that also always combos. So that's something to be aware of. And then for opponents who are coming in the air, luckily for you, Tina has some crazy anti-airs. So first of all, 6A universal anti-air. Tina has one of the best ones, really excellent hitbox. It's a launcher, so it just goes right into her combos. And then one of the most diabolical moves ever put to fighting games, and this is the post-nerf version, 6D. So this move is air unblockable. The unenhanced version, for the record, is air blockable, but it still does like a ton of chip damage. The air unblockable 6D goes crazy far, and both of these moves have negative edge. So you can just throw it out and hold it there, and if at any point your opponent jumps, you just let go, and it nukes them from orbit. As fun as this is, I think it's only relevant in certain matchups. Like, I really like 6D negative edge for the S-Tina matchup, but a lot of characters, like, committing to this and playing out the animation isn't worth it. And then also when you hold her negative edge moves, as you can see, it really depletes her Q gauge. So you need to be careful. Like, if you start doing stuff like this, you're gonna run out of cuteness really quickly. But for certain characters who like really need to go into the air to be able to get their game plan started, this is incredibly strong, especially when they have their back to the corner, and then it really allows you to kind of lock them down. Of course, there's also air-to-air options, so if your opponent's air dashing at you, just air throw them. Air throw is super good. And there's also some incredible other air-to-air options. So J5C is the super slow advancing projectile, and then J6C goes at a different trajectory. Amazing combo starter, and it's incredibly plus on block. So this move is super strong in neutral because you can just throw it out. And if your opponent is air dashing at you, they can get clipped by that and you go into full combo. If they block it on the ground, you have enough time to eat and continue to be plus. And if you do the enhanced version, 6C, you can continue to do air actions afterwards. So I can do multiple 6Cs, I can do 6C into air dash, forward or backward, and if you hold the dash button, and this is just kind of a universal mechanic in this game, you can basically buffer a micro dash between 6Cs, which makes it an incredible approach option, because watch this. That's a jailed string. As soon as they block that first cake, they have to just hold the rest of that, and you're plus enough to just eat in their face and then do a jailed string afterward. Like, look at this. Eat. There's nothing they can do. Now, Tina doesn't have the most amazing pressure, so you want to be a little bit careful about using that against characters with strong defense. I highly do not recommend doing that against Yagabi, for instance, but against a lot of characters, like this type of approach option where it punishes them for being passive and then you can go into your mix is insanely strong. Tina also has other air moves, so she's got JA, that's like your nice quick fast option. I find myself not using that one that much just because it if I'm in range for JA, I'm probably in range for air throw, and I'd rather go for an air throw because it's easier to stabilize the combo. You've got JB. This move is super solid, little anti-air, and if you clip someone with a JB, it's full combo. And I'll show that in the combo section of the guide. There's J6B. This is the enhanced version, and this is one of the few moves that I find myself using the enhanced version less. It's very good at covering space, and it causes Tina to do this kind of float thing. You can even dash into it to land quickly out of it. But it is kind of annoying to stabilize combos off this, so I just find myself not using it that much. But I will say, because the combos are so unstable off of it, like getting the combo feels really good. There's J2B. This is one of Tina's few overheads in her kit. J2B and J3B. So J2B, this move is not that good, but it does hit directly under her. So if you do like an anti-air bait, for instance, you jump at your opponent, jump out of their anti-air range, and then throw this down, it's a pretty okay option. And on counter hit, you're probably getting full combo, depending on the height and, you know, variety of factors. But it's a solid option. J3B is one of those evil normals that Tina is known for. First of all, it has this really nice 45-degree trajectory where it goes down and then up. And as you can see, it hits on that upswing like pretty generously on the hitbox. Like, I'm covering a ton of screen space with that. Much like the enhanced J6C, she can act after doing it, including doing multiple ones. So she can approach you like that, she can throw it out and then backdash, she can throw it out, double jump, throw another one. Very good for anti-air baiting again. And the most evil thing about this move, it's an overhead even after it bounces off the ground. So if your opponent is crouch blocking, they can very easily get clipped off of that, and it's not too hard to just convert that into a full combo. Like, bam, full combo. And it's just because they got clipped by an overhead from full screen. That move is really, really good. Now, it's important to mention when I'm talking about all these really, really powerful enhanced moves, if you're the opponent, you don't need to interact with them. Like, if your opponent who's a Tina player is just like spending cuteness willy-nilly and just throwing stuff out, you can just block it out, and then like the moment you see her eat, a lot of characters can punish that from 3/4 screen. So for instance, in the Yagabi matchup, I complain about this a lot because I hate that matchup. If you know she's gonna eat, you can just like twitch react to the eat animation and immediately do fatal tackle. It's messed up, and it's very hard for Tina to deal with. And then as the Tina player, you really need to be considering how low you let your cuteness get, that you don't want that to happen. So I highly, highly recommend, if you're the Tina player, do not let yourself get down to no cuteness, because you lose all of your strong options, and your opponent at that point, if they're paying attention to the bar, knows what you're going for. They know you need to eat, and landing this move without having any cuteness is really hard. So you're kind of stuck to just eating. There are some ways around this. As the Tina player, if you're out of cuteness and you have a bar and you're desperate to just get some cuteness, you can do a fatal eat. So fatal eat immediately fills your full bar no matter what you were at, but it's at a cost. So first of all, obviously you're paying the meter, but when you fatal, you're also putting yourself into meter penalty, so you're missing out on all the meter you would have gotten from eating that food, right? So if you look at it, I'm at half a bar, I eat here, I gained almost half a bar off of filling my cute gauge. And so I really want you in your head when you use fatal eat to remind yourself that you're really not spending 1 meter, you're spending 1.5 meters, because you're putting yourself into meter penalty and missing out on that opportunity cost. That being said, fatal eat is still a very strong option that you have to represent. And the reason is, I mean, first of all, it's safe. You can cancel it into anything. So you can just fatal eat. If you see your opponent coming at you, you can anti-air them. You can fatal eat and then dash. You can fatal eat and then throw an attack out. Basically, the only thing you can't do is go into block. And that's just due to how the fatal mechanic works. It's also very easy. If you see yourself, you know, you're spending your cuteness pretty aggressively. Let's say the opponent's blocking it out, and you're at 1 cuteness, you can put them in block stun. Oops. You can put them in block stun, and then fatal eat, and immediately just continue the pressure. And that's a very, very safe way to refill your cute gauge. So it's not my recommended way of dealing with being low on meter, but if you want to avoid desperate situations, especially in matchups where I highly recommend playing safe, like the Tay matchup, like the Yagabi matchup, it's definitely an option, and it's something you want to keep track of, and you want to be thinking about it before your meter is empty, because you really restrict your options once you get down to that last bar. So when you're at 1 pip of cuteness left, that's when you really need to be thinking, how am I going to get my cuteness back? So there's obviously just mixing up your timings. If your opponent isn't ready for you to eat, it will be hard for them to react. So a lot of the time I'll have like 3 bars and I'll just 6E and then eat again. And a lot of the time, because they're really threatened by that second 6E, they won't react because they don't see me as being desperate to eat at that time. Obviously don't get predictable, but that's a great thing, a great way to sneak in some eats in neutral. And I think there's sometimes you just need to be willing to take a risk. Another thing is trying to get them to block a cake. So if I throw this move out, it puts them in a ton of block stun and gives me enough time easily to eat and then continue pressure. Obviously J6C costs some cuteness, so that's something to be aware of. J5C, you may be tempted to like throw it out, because if they block that J5C, you get to eat for free. But you have to be so careful, because think about the range that you need to be in to do that. And then think about the number of options your opponent might have to get around this. So like, super easy, super obvious example. If I'm here and I just throw that out, my opponent can on reaction just do any kind of fatal attack, do any air unblockable option. Like you can get hit by the Yagabi Mistfiner, main 6D, like a ton of different options. They can even, if it's like a fast character like Cecil, just walk right under it, you know? So I don't recommend being super reliant on this option, at least at this range, to generate enough plus frames to eat safely. It's something that you can rotate in, but you don't want to get predictable with it. One of the nice things though is like if you're at this range, you can just throw it out. It's much harder for opponents to punish most of the time. And if they happen to be running in on you on the ground, it might clip them and then you get to eat for free. And that costs no meter. Especially if you are at like 1 pip, you know your opponent's trying to gain space on you. You can throw this out and on hit, full combo with 6E. If it whiffs, you didn't spend any resources on that. And if they block it, you get to eat for free. So you still need to be careful because a lot of characters can punish you from full screen for stuff like that. Or they can just run up on you and start gaining screen space. If you miss, you're still putting yourself at some risk, and that's something to keep track of. But it's definitely one of those options you want to keep track of for refilling your Q bar. I know I'm harping on and on about meter management in neutral, and it's because it's really important. So I actually haven't talked about all of her neutral tools that interact with the meter, and so I'm going to talk about a few of them real quick. First of all, 236B. It's this nice little saw blade projectile. It costs 2 pips of cuteness, and it slides in on the ground. So this one actually hits faster the further away your opponent is, but it can be a little unreliable because people can just run through it. It only hits on the ground, so you're gonna spend 2 cuteness, and if your opponent air dashed at you, you might be a little bit cooked. But it is a super strong option. And then against passive players, if you want to get really kind of frisky with it, you can fatal cancel that and just dash in, and you immediately are plus in their face. It's really strong and really hard to deal with. And because you're fatal dashing in, if they actually, you know, react and parry this, you can block that. So if they get the fatal parry, you're still going to be minus in that situation. But it's not like you just, you know, got hit by the parry. So this is super strong, and then you can immediately go into an overhead. But look how much cuteness I spent for that. You can immediately go into an overhead, go into a low, go into a jailed string. You can even, let me build up some cuteness real quick. You can even throw them. And if you're there in the corner, that throw is going to go into a very powerful combo. So that's 236B. Probably more relevant is her 236A, which is this move. So I'm going to show you, it has 3 variants. And basically what it does is it sets a trap on the ground that's just going to stay there for a fixed time. And Tina can choose where to put it. So the way I think of it and the way I denote this is 236A2A, which will set the saw blade halfway between you and your opponent. 236A4A, which will put it right at your feet. This is a super strong defensive option. And 236A6A, which actually put it behind them. But if they're in the corner, it'll put it on top of them instead. So that does make it a very strong Oki tool. It's an ender that I like in a lot of combos. I would say the most useful of these variants is the 4A version, because against characters who really want to like air dash in on you, or they want to fatal dash at you, or they want to slide in on the ground, you're just setting this lingering hitbox on the ground, and they just have to respect it, because if they air dash in on you and it doesn't hit, they're gonna get punished by that. It also kind of has very interesting applications in the projectile war. So let's talk about, like, for instance, you're fighting Main, right? Main has this super potent chargeable 236A projectile, and it is a level 2 projectile if he charges it. Level 2 projectiles are very hard to deal with, but this trap is also a level 2 projectile. So if you see that coming at you, or you know that Main's about to throw one of those out, you can just throw one of these on the ground, and when they clash with each other, they're going to delete each other because it's the same level of projectile. Tina typically in Fireball Wars against level 1 projectiles, her jab technically counts as a projectile. It's super, super disjointed. It's a very strong tool. I mean, look how far it goes. And if your opponent's just throwing out a projectile, like a lot of characters' projectiles, like Main's uncharged 236A, for instance, she can just jab it out of the air to delete it. It's a very, very strong option in the matchups where it's relevant. And then when you need that level 2 projectile, you have this. Speaking of level 2 projectiles, Tina actually has another one. 236C, which is this slow advancing attack. It's called Tina-chan Hole. I don't think anyone has told Free what that means. It's supposed to be a black hole. Eventually someone will probably tell him before release, but for now, that's what this move is called. It's a slow advancing level 2 projectile, and it stays on the screen for like a devastatingly long time. Tina can just kind of walk in behind it. And of course, because Tina has some of the best anti-airs in the game, if they ever dare to try and jump over it, you just hit them with one of these. 236C has some niche applications, but it is a very, very strong combo ender, and in certain matchups, just insanely good in neutral. It's just worth noting that a lot of characters can fatal dash through it with the right timing. And so that's something to be aware of. Like if your opponent has meter, you're not totally safe to be walking in behind this because of fatal options and the invulnerability. Obviously opponents can low profile this because it's not sitting there on the ground. So in matchups where that's a relevant factor, but for low profile options, let's say I think Main's 236B, like if you're close behind it, like you're running in behind it and you block that 236B, the 236C will actually punish them. I also really, really love this move as a combo ender for air throw combos. So let me show you with not blocking. Really, really potent Oki tool at the cost of 2 cuteness. Because it's setting that like lingering threat that lets you kind of stand behind it and be very threatening without having to commit to any options. When I get into combo routing, I'll be talking more about the use cases for that as an ender, but it's a super, super strong option. The last metered option for neutral that's really relevant, and this one's also useful for mix-ups, is her 4A. So this is the only metered like Q bar normal that isn't on a forward input. One of the annoying things about it being on 4A is that it means that while you're blocking, you can't buffer 5A if you're stand blocking, because you're gonna get 4A. If you play Tina long enough, you are going to just accidentally do a bar A 4A and get exploded for it. It's just part of the character experience. I highly recommend, if you want to contest on defense, just stick to 2A. It's a little bit annoying if you want to be stand blocking, but accidental 4As can absolutely get you killed because this move is slow. It is a full screen tracking overhead that's plus on block and just does a ridiculous amount of chip damage. Like if your opponent is just sitting there respecting you, like don't be afraid to just do stuff like this. Like it's so strong and it's chipping away at their life, it's chipping away at their risk. Like this move is so strong. The other thing to do is really mix it in with your pressure, you know? Like your opponent's constantly going to be trying to dash block at you, like get in that way. And it's such a good tracking tool for some characters who like to try and up back and then throw out an air projectile or something to create space. It will track them up into the air, and that can really catch people off guard. Or if they happen to air block it, you can even, well, let me see if I can get the timing right. You can even jail it into an air unblockable tool like that. It's super strong, but because it's so slow, it is, you know, in the lineage of zoning tools where that alludes to the opponent just running at you. So that's something to be aware of as well. One of the other, and this one's kind of niche, but I do want to talk about it in the neutral section. One of the other important tools is her 2D/3D. So these moves are, first of all, one of her ways of generating cuteness. So if the opponent doesn't block, they'll set food on the ground, which is nice because the food stays out even if you had a full bar. So you can like do this, spend some bar, you know, you can do this, spend some bar like this. Oh, I messed it up. Spend some bar like this and then run in and pick up the food. So you can kind of bank some food on the ground. There's some really nasty Oki setups that take advantage of that fact. But this tool also has negative edge. Tina's D buttons tend to do that. It's exactly like I said with 60. Like you hold it, it spends some of her cuteness, and it just creates this threat bubble. I don't recommend it in a lot of matchups because I think a lot of the time, if you want coverage on the ground in front of you, you're better off just doing this. But setting out a 2D is, I think, a little bit faster, and it allows you to kind of move around while keeping that threat. It's a niche option, but you can literally hold this while you're in block stun. You will get absolutely hit with Fatal Guard, but there's certain matchups where, like, I really like to do this against Yagavi. I'll have one of these out, I'll block one of his pressure options, do a guard cancel backdash, and then release that. I'll probably put a clip on screen when I'm editing this, but it's definitely one of those tools that you want to keep in the back of your toolbox. Of course, for Oki situations, you can do that, and I'll talk about this later, but you can also combo it into itself if you negative edge it, and that's super useful for her Oki, because you can set twice as much food on the ground. Let's see, neutral options. There's a few more kind of niche ones that I want to talk about before moving on. So first one, JD. This move is super committal because it is super minus on block. But she like hops into the air and then comes back down with these wings. She like hops into the air, comes back down. If you land in front of your opponent, you're going to get punished by that. Now you might think, why would I ever use this move? Well, in order to explain that, I need to show you the hitbox viewer. This move is absurdly disjointed. Like, look at that. Look at the disjoint on her wings. It's truly ridiculous. And if you're really confident in your air-to-air timings, this can be one of the most like unmess-withable air-to-air options. If she fatals it, she can even cancel it into things. So you can just like throw that out, and then it stays out because the wings are technically a projectile. So you can literally like see how even after I canceled into J5A, the wings like stay on screen. So it is unfortunately not an overhead. This would be an insane mix-up tool if it was. But as it is, it's one of those niche tools where it's like, I think my opponent's gonna jump, but I'm not sure, and I really just want to spend a bar to make sure I have him locked down. Like, it does that. It does that. Let's see, another one of her more niche tools. This move, I call it Spike. It's 2C/3C. The difference between the two is mostly the position that they're at. So the enhanced versus the unenhanced version, it's just spawning out at a different position. I'm gonna turn the hitbox viewer back off. Actually, I'm gonna leave it on for this. One of the important things to note is that this move just whiffs on crouchers. Even the tall ones, it whiffs on Yagabi while he's crouching. It looks very silly because it just passes through his head. but it does do that. It is one of those like very fast options. I don't super recommend it in neutral, but it is a very potent combo tool. One of the interesting quirks of this move is that even though it's a very strong combo tool, because it whiffs on crouchers, you might need to stabilize it with another move. So what I mean by that is 6C, I forgot to mention, on hit puts the opponent into a stagger state. So if my opponent is crouching and I try and 3C them, it's just not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. But if I 6C, she goes into that stagger state, and then you can combo into 3C. So it gives you a little bit of ability to 3C, 2C, bring them closer, and then kind of go into the rest of your combo routing. If you want to get even better combos, you can, like, you know, 6C, 3C, you can, you know, put in micro dashes, you can 6C, fatal eats, like very powerful combo options. It is a neutral tool, and then it's one of the moves in this game that has very useful fatal properties. So fatal 3C or fatal 2C puts out 3 spikes instead, which covers just a huge portion of the screen. You can use it in neutral to anti-air people, but it's important to note that this move is air blockable. The absolute most useful case for this is after a fatal eat. So you fatal eat, you cancel into 3C, and it maintains that fatal property into the 3C. So it's very good to fatal eat and then just cover a ton of the screen. Oh, I didn't hear meter. And it's one of her best combo stabilizers. Like, you just, and now you've launched them into the air with full cuteness. Super strong option. Okay, now that I spent most of the runtime of this video probably talking about neutral, it's time to move on to talking about offense. So the first thing I always tell people about Tina offense is you don't need to actually do mix-ups. Tina is definitely a character that can get away with doing strike mix. So if you have an opponent like in the corner and they have no meter, there's really not much to stop you from being able to do this, right? Just start chipping them out like this. It's very hard to deal with, especially if you mix up your eat timings. And the only thing I would say is when you're doing these pressure sequences, if I just spam 6A, I'm gonna get kind of pushed back the full screen. No worries though, if I hold the dash button, she'll automatically do a little micro dash between them, which is super convenient. But this obviously is not a super good option once you start getting to opponents that have metered options, because at any point they can fatal dash, they can choose any number of fatal options, and just because you're out of parry range doesn't mean you're safe anymore. So that's when you start needing to mix in other options. So first of all, you want to probably contribute a little to the mental stack by mixing in highs and lows. So easiest way to just sneak a little high in there is one of these, J3B. You can do a 4A, although it's important to note 4A is very much vulnerable to your opponent just running forward and causing it to whiff or pressing fatal dash. And then your lows, J3C is a great option. It's plus on block, combos on hit if you get the clean hit. So I think it's important to give your opponent enough options to worry about that they can't just react to the reactable stuff and start using, you know, their fatal options to get through. But I think also, just due to the way that Tina's pressure works, there's a lot of gaps in her pressure. You should expect your opponent to really be fishing for those fatal options, like Yagami fatal tackle, Kidora fatal 236A, Cecil fatal 236C. Like, a lot of these really strong Abari options that cost 1 bar are incredibly hard for Tina to deal with. I think one of the easiest things that you can do is just like, as you're mixing in your pressure, just take breaks to not do anything. And oftentimes your opponent will see a gap in the pressure and just mash that fatal option out, and you can parry it to keep your position. If your opponent's being super respectful, I always say that taking little cheeky resets is worth it. So J5C, J6C, incredible reset options to refill your keep bar, and really like good to sneak in, because then you just get to not worry about your resources. You can also, if you want to do pressure extensions, like just, you know, fatal eat and dash back in to gain space. You can fatal eat and then go into any number of pressure options. Cheeky resets. You can also do stuff like this, right, where you reset in the air. So they're focused on blocking the overhead. They're probably concerned about that second overhead coming out, and this is definitely something they should be worried about, because double overhead is really strong. And this can be one of those hard to deal with mix-ups at close range. So they're worried about blocking the second overhead. You throw out a cake, you eat, and then keep extending your pressure. So that's kind of the main way that you're gonna try and pressure people from around half to 3/4 screen, like anywhere outside of parry range, I would say. So like around here, or further away, you really can just try and keep resetting on them. Depending on the opponent, this can be more or less effective. But sometimes you are going to have to actually do real threatening mix to your opponent. Like, some players are just going to block it out, and if they do, awesome. You just start chipping them. You probably feel pretty good about that. Against certain opponents, they are really going to be fishing for that gap to try and hit you, in which case you probably want to try to be a little bit more like aggressive in terms of actually trying to land that hit. So first thing you can do is high-low. So at close range, this J3B mix-up tends to be pretty threatening. So let's say you do 5A, 5A, J3B, right? The first one can be pretty easy to react to, because as soon as they see your feet leave the ground, they probably should move to a standing position. But if I go into a second one, that second one becomes much harder to react to. And the number of times like I do J3B, J3B, and the second one hits, and depending on the height, you can do 3. And if you get any of them hit, then you can get a full combo. So something to be aware of, I will say, this is fuzzyable. So if I go reaction and then into the low, I have tried every way I know how to make this and then like the second one or that hit on the same frame, and as far as I can tell, it's always going to be fuzzyable by a few frames. That being said, fuzzyable by a few frames does not mean it's a fake mix-up. It is the kind of thing that hits strong players all the time, and you should be aware of. The real weakness of this mix is having to get the first J3B. A lot of players, if they're really dialed in, or if they play Yagabi, are just going to be looking for your feet to leave the ground for any reason, and then they're immediately just going to throw out a 6A, or in Yagabi's case is stupid freaking DP that's really annoying. And you just need to be aware, like if your opponent is ready for this, they can blow you up. This is not gapless, and they can absolutely explode you for that. If they press late, they'll, you know, counter hit J3B, and then you get a full combo. So, you know, I'm not trying to say that this isn't a strong option, but it's something that you need to be careful about. If you're getting towards further ranges, I also think you can get good high-low mix with this little J3B, like whenever you're in clean hit range, because clean hit this combos, and then point blank, it also combos. So at this range, you're not getting much. At this range, because you have the clean hit, you're threatening low and high, right? And both of those lead into a combo, so this is quite threatening. This middle ground range, your high-low mix is not very threatening. You're probably better off going for stuff like this. Like that kind of pressure sequence, where it's very ambiguous when the high and the low are coming. Or, if you're at super close range, you can just go for strike throw. Tina has the absolute biggest throw range in the game, as I mentioned before, and it can be very useful, although I will say Tina doesn't get to set it up quite as easily as some other characters do. By which I mean, it's like I said before, her gapless strings are pretty rare, so you need to be much more respectful of mashing opponents than a lot of other characters that'll just like blow up your opponent, right? For Tina, in terms of truly gapless grounded strings where you can threaten a throw, it's just spamming 5-A's is gapless, 6B is gapless, and if you hold the dash button, you can hold your ground. So as you see, I'm getting pushed back, but if I hold the dash button, I stay in pretty close range. That's completely gapless. And if I have 4 bars and I hear that like chain sound from my opponent fatal guarding, I will often just do something like this. And it just does so much guard damage that if they get fatal guarded at any point during that sequence, they're gonna get guard broken. So that type of string is only really useful in situations where you have like a huge meter advantage, but a lot of the time you can do like some kind of shorter variation of that, just because you have like 2 bars and your opponent fatal guarded twice, right? And you can try and use those kind of guaranteed setups to chip away at your opponent's risk bar. Tina is definitely a character that can get guard breaks, although as soon as you start getting out to further ranges, it becomes a lot harder to do because you just have no way to gapless string people at this range. But it's definitely something to be aware of, and oftentimes if my opponent is starting to let their guard bar get chunked a little bit, I'll kind of try and make sure to just tack a move on every once in a while so that it doesn't regenerate, and that way if I do get that like neutral win where I force them to block, I can try and route into a guard break. It's just something to be aware of, and because you're already kind of doing strike offense on this character, there is absolutely value to paying attention and knowing when it's best to fish for that guard break. For throws, now here's the real thing. Strike throw offense is really bad in this game if you cannot pressure your opponent into holding block. So it's really important at close range you have to represent those gapless strings and, you know, stagger type pressure, and then remember that you don't need to walk up that far to throw them, so you can throw them at that range. And if you do get a throw in the corner, that's full combo. I'll show the route in the combo section, but even if you have 0 bars and you land that throw, you can round to a super, and it will do just a lot of damage. So that's the kind of the strike throw offense. Last thing, if your opponent's like really into fuzzy jumping, which some players are because it's one of the few fuzzy options you can pick without getting hit by fatal guard, super easy to just throw one of these out to catch them, or my preference, air throw them. Do your air throw combo. I love air throw. It's my favorite thing to land in any fighting game, and especially in this fighting game where I get a whole combo off of it. That's basically everything you need to know about Tina pressure. I think kind of by far it is her weakest aspect as a character, and kind of the thing that, in my opinion, prevents her from being a true top tier. Now, that's all of the pressure that exists. But I do kind of want to mention the forbidden left-right mix-ups. The reason I'm mentioning this is it's a call to action. We do not have strong left-right mix on Tina. You would think with negative edge you can do something like that, but unfortunately, just due to how this game works, there is a ton of cross-up protection in this game. And so basically the way it works is, in order for me to get any projectile in this game to cross up, I need to force them to block on the other side first to gain cross-up protection, or to break the cross-up protection. So I throw this out, I jump over her head. Even if I wait right now, she still had cross-up protection. If she's holding forward or backward in that situation, she's gonna block it, right? The only way I can have this not get cross-up protected is I need her to block on the other side first. So jump over her head, block. Now the cross-up protection is broken. But in order for that to actually be a mix-up, I would need to cross her a second time. So I'd have to do something like this. That is technically a cross-up, but no opponent is just gonna let you double air dash over their head like that. And as far as I have found, I was not able to come up with any practical setups for that. But I had a few things that felt like they came close. And so I just want to say, you know, for the labbers in the audience, if you want to try and crack like a difficult labbing question, I would say see if you can figure out how to make this like a useful mix-up. The only setups I found cost a bar and do like no damage, and it's a 50-50, and it's just like, at that point, if you are reaching the end of your combo and you have a bar, just spend it to extend the combo. But maybe one of you can figure something out. I'm kind of hoping so, because I think it'd be really cool to have left-right mix setups on this character. But I don't know how to do it. I have no clue. Okay, I am now going to move on to talking about defense. Tina is definitely one of those characters. I am now going to move on to talking about defense. Tina's definitely one of those characters that is super reliant on the system mechanics for defense. She has a few kind of unique defensive options, but for the most part, you're going to be relying on the system defense options. So your parries, guard cancels, universal DP, fatals, like that kind of thing. That being said, I'll take a little minute to talk about some of the options that are unique to her. So first of all, her jabs, 2A and 5A, are some of the best Abare jabs in the game. I mean, these are amazing, amazing jabs. Like, look how far this goes. They are just really very disjointed, very far-reaching, and they're just as fast as everyone else's. But unfortunately, they do have the downside of, if you're ever holding stand block and you press A, you're gonna get 4A. Just something to be aware of. It will happen to you eventually. If you know ease off though, you know that no matter how good the button is, Abare in this game is just very risky. It's due to the way that the Fatal Guard mechanic works. If you are mashing and your opponent did a gapless block string, you are going to get hit. So you need to have a lot more respect, not just for the potential counter hit when you throw out a jab on defense, but also for Fatal Guard. And a lot of characters, if you get Fatal Guarded once, it's not too bad. If you get Fatal Guarded twice, you're going to get guard broken. The second kind of strength is for characters that like to go into the air. Tina 6A is very good on Abare. Highly recommend this option. Against characters like Cecil, who might jump into the air on offense. Main, depending on the setup, although a lot of the time he's doing it gapless. Kidora sometimes. Like, there are ways to interact with that 6A. Respect that Tina has a really strong one. And so that's like her Abare normals. Tina also does have a reversal super. So it's 2 and 4D. It looks like this. It's -10 on block, But one of the kind of funny things about it is that it is weirdly hard to punish. So first of all, if you hit the opponent with it, it's a hard knockdown, and then it sets this field on the screen that eventually causes these feathers to fall from the sky. So hard knockdown, and then I can run some pressure, eat, and then those will stay out even if Tina gets hit. On block, those also still come out. It's quite funny. So this move's -10, so they can punish you there, but the feathers are still gonna come out. So as the opponent, it's on them to know a combo that doesn't put them in the field where the feathers will hit them. A lot of players just won't know the combo, and that will actually get you out of the combo, which is kind of hilarious. Although if you get punished, like let's say they threw out a projectile, if you get punished before that like -10 window, the projectiles won't come out. So like if your opponent parries, you won't get those projectiles. So it's a strong option, but it's still very much a punishable reversal super. And a lot of the time, if you have the 2 bars for the super, you might just be better off with a guard cancel. Kind of the last thing that Tina has going for her on defense is just the fact that she has huge normals and the way that interacts with the fatal system. So like, if your opponent is just like kind of trying to pressure you like outside of parry range, and they happen to leave a gap in their combo, Fatal 5C is like absurdly good Abare, right? Invincible, frame 3, like all Fatal moves are. And it just covers a huge ground. Like anyone who's on the ground is probably going to get hit by that unless they low profile you. And on hit, you really do get a lot because this move has a huge stagger on counter hit. Like look how plus that is, right? Plus 61. In that situation, let's say I am out of Q bar, I can still Fatal 5C, eat, and continue the combo. It's very, very strong. So it's one of those things where it's like a lot of characters have fatal options on defense, but Tina's really are some of the best, like especially against a grounded opponent. Like this is one of the best possible things you could even imagine to hit on a Abare. There's other ones like, you know, Fatal JD, which I mentioned. Your opponent's coming at you, but you're not sure if they're coming in the air. You can do Fatal 6A. It's a very strong option. Fatal moves, I mean, if you play this game, you know that fatal moves are good at Abare. And the last one, this is not a Tina specific option, but a lot of people don't know about this. Fatal Dash is invincible, frames 3 to 12. And it is one of the few options that you can mash or buffer without triggering Fatal Guard, because the dash button doesn't trigger Fatal Guard. So I find myself a lot of the time when I have my back to the opponent in the corner, I'll like wait for them to throw out a projectile or something, fatal through it, and then press a button, or fatal through it and then throw them. Very, very strong options. That is a universal mechanic, but especially because Tina's ground speed is so low, a lot of people are really not ready for her to be doing point blank options when they're at this range. Like, let's say you're, you know, Kidora is trying to do one of her cheeky little setups. She's got the sigil out. She's at this range. You fatal dash through it. You throw her back into the corner, and now it's a total role reversal where you're now pressuring her. Very, very strong option. Something to be aware of. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about is her combo theory. So for some people, Tina combos are really easy, and for some people, Tina combos are super, super hard. And I think the difference is that it's the two type of fighting game players. Some fighting game players really just like learning set combos and doing the combos that they practiced, whereas some players really like learning the combo theory and then modifying their combos based on the situation. If you are a combo theory type of player, I think Tina's combos are not too hard, but if you are a learn the set combo type of player, it can be a little bit difficult to get used to her meter system, because which combos you're allowed to go for depends entirely on how much cuteness you have. There's a way to stabilize a combo, but that's just kind of fundamentally how the game works. I think this is like the number one thing that kind of filters you out. I don't want to get too much into how the combo systems work, but there's a few things you need to know. So first of all, if you're not familiar with repetitive penalty, if you use the same move multiple times in a combo, it applies a ton of scaling and reduces the combo timer. So you'll quickly run out your combo timer if you just spam the same move over and over again, and you're not going to get much damage. Luckily for Tina, this game is programmed in such a way that benefits you, which is moves, like the enhanced and unenhanced versions of the moves, do not count as different, or sorry, they do not count as the same move for repetitive penalty. So it's very good to mix in like a 6C and a 5C into a combo, or a 3C and a 2C, which is super important for her routing. And I believe this also applies for fatal options. So as you can see, I went 6C, 3C, fatal 3C, and those also count as different moves. For those of you who don't know as well, fatal options add a little bit of extra time to the combo timer. They do a bit of unscaled damage. So those are kind of the core system mechanics that you need to know in order to understand Tina's combo theory. I'm going to break it down into sections talking about different types of moves, like starters versus extenders. And I'll be giving example combos. So for those of you who just want to see a combo and just execute it, my plan is to just put some example combos at the end of the video. So for those of you who just want to see that, skip to the end. There'll be a link in the description, or a timestamp in the description, that'll tell you where to go to see the example combos. For those of you who are interested in combo theory, you're about to hear me yap for a really long time. So the first section that I want to talk about is starters. So which starter is going to determine which combo you go for. That makes sense. But kind of the biggest thing about which starter is that also determines what range you're at when you get that starter. So at close range, 5A or 2A are some of our most common starters. If you can, you want to avoid doing the double jab confirm, because you immediately hit yourself with a repetitive penalty and lose out on a ton of damage. If you hit a 5A, you probably want to go into either 6A or 5B. So if you have no resources, so to speak, you can do a simple ABCD combo and end on your sweep to build up resources. So a lot of times if you find yourself like backed into a corner, you have no cuteness, and you happen to hit like a random starter, different variations, and as you can see, if I do more jabs, I do less damage, of the ABCD combo are going to get you to a similar spot. If you have resources, I recommend 6A. And this also depends on your screen positioning. So let's say you have back to the corner, 6A, you can jump in and then air throw them into the corner. Very solid way to side switch. But because it's a launcher that's also jump cancelable, you can just go right into kind of your typical full air carry combos. So let's say you're like half screen, you hit that 5A starter, you probably want to carry them into the corner. Depending on how much resources you have will affect which route that you can get. So if I have like really low cuteness, I might do something like this just for the corner carry and then throw them into the corner. If I have more resources, I can do stuff like that. There's a lot of different variations. That's 5A. A lot of her other combos fall into a similar category, which I am going to call moves that you need to stabilize with 6C. So for examples I'm thinking of, if you hit J6E, if you hit 4A, if you hit J3B, all of those moves you just go into 6C and it stabilizes the combo. And the reason you kind of need that combo stabilizer is, first of all, 6C does a lot of damage, so getting it into the combo early is a good way to avoid scaling away most of your damage. But the main thing is, you don't want to have to crouch confirm. I don't want to have to crouch confirm. And at range, you probably want to bring them closer to you, or at least launch them into the air with 3C. If you don't want to crouch confirm, the best way to reliably hit that is to go into 6C first. Now, this of course is going to require you after the starter to have 2 cuteness. If you don't have 2 cuteness, you might be kind of cooked. So let's say 4A, 6C, 3C, bring him in, knock him back away, whatever the route you want is. J3B. Oh, that one didn't combo, but it's going to depend on the range and whether it's counter hit or non-counter hit. J6C. All of those are the kind of attack that you probably want to stabilize with 6C. Especially if they're at that clean hit range, which is the tip of the 6C. You definitely want to, because you just get so much damage. And in fact, if you like, you'll see a lot of beginner Tina players, like they'll just hit a 6C and they'll just do this, which, I mean, 2,500 for just spamming 6C 3 times is really good. So 6C stabilizer, super solid. And then of course sometimes 6C is just the starter. In that case, you obviously don't need the 6C stabilizer, and if you do, you are kind of wasting cuteness, but it is an option there. Off these 6C stabilizer options, you can 3C to bring them in. If you want, you can also 3C, like let's say you want to do a burst safe route, you can 3C, 6C, or 6D, 3C, 6D, and just kind of bounce them around at full screen. This is a great option if you're just sitting on a ton of cuteness. And while it's not a hard knockdown, 6D or 5D as an ender is a super good option because it's so plus, right? So there I did the greedy 236B eat. If I wanted to do the 236A eat, I could also be plus enough to, you know, set a projectile, any number of options really. If you hit the opponent with one of these options and you don't have cuteness, 6E also is just very plus on its own. So I'm gonna go ahead and change her. Let's see, Tina Cute Bar. Let's say you have 2 cuteness and you hit a 4A, right? Honestly, what I recommend in this situation, you hit 4A, 6E, and then eat. Because 6E is so plus, you are kind of giving up your ability to extend the combo, but if you land 4A, like, you're probably not getting much at this range unless you have cuteness or a bar. So in that case, eat. This is one of those things, like especially at the start of the match when you start with no resources, you might find yourself doing a lot. Okay, a few other kind of relevant combo starters. I would say JB is a relevant combo starter. Let me have Tina start jumping so I can show you the air-to-air. That move combos into J3B, and you can dash at them and extend the combo. So that's a pretty relevant combo starter. 3B. So this one depends on the range. So 3B, that's your low option. At any range, if they get counter hit, you can combo into 3C. So let's see, counter on. Right, as you see, it kind of shot her forward. So it'll just combo into 3C. If it's non-counter hit, you need to either be at point blank range, and you can combo into 5A and just treat it like a 5A starter and go into that route, or you need to be at clean hit range. So either at super close or super far ranges. These middle ranges, you may be able able to pick up with like 5B, but you're not going to pick up with 2C. Like it's just not working for you. So that's something to know. It's one of the sketchier combo starters, especially because the counter hit confirm is difficult. I mean, it's difficult because it's a counter hit confirm. It's not a particularly difficult counter hit confirm. And I think the last combo starter I want to talk about is air throw. Air throw, just stabilize it with a jab and treat it like a jab starter. Although it's worth noting, first of all, air throws have quite a bit of scaling as a starter, and oftentimes you're not getting that much damage off of it, so it's going to kind of inform how you want to route the rest of the combo. Oh yeah, I forgot another important one. Now that she's jumping, 6D. 6D is a very strong anti-air starter. If you happen to clip someone with a 6C or 6D, I recommend one of two options. So the first thing is, if you want to do something burst safe, you can just spam 6D. This tends to piss people off because this combo is super easy and does like a stupid amount of damage. If you are not too worried about their burst, or you're willing to just, you know, bait it out or whatever, you can bring them in with 3C into 2C. Oops, I missed it. But you can hit them towards you. You also, if you want to do burst safe routes, can do like something like 6D, 3C, 6D, 3C, and just loop that as long as you have cuteness. And that, I think, actually sums about up her regular combo starters. There's always niche cases, but I'm trying to cover the most important stuff for this guide. Okay, I know I already talked a little bit about stabilizers, but there's a few different moves where if you just hit a random starter and you're not sure how to stabilize it, they're the ones you rely on, right? 6C I already talked about. 3C launches them towards you, and then this one, it is a stabilizer, but you really need to be spacing dependent, right? Because 6C into 2C will work at certain ranges. If I'm too close, 3C into 2C might work at certain ranges. If I'm really close, I might need to go 3C and then immediately try and pick it up. I can go 3C, 2C. Like if I get them right into that close range, super solid, super solid. If I'm super far, let's see. I might need to do 2 3Cs, which unfortunately I'm causing repetitive penalty in that scenario. So just something to be aware of. But these are like super common stabilizers that you'll see in the middle of most Tina combos. And the last move that I would kind of classify as a combo stabilizer is 6D. So actually I won't have her jumping. Let's say launch into the air, right? It will kind of put her to the same location relative to you and then hover the opponent in the air for a relatively long time to allow you to reposition. So if you ever aren't sure and the opponent's in the air, you hit like a weird air-to-air starter, you can just start out one of these and it'll kind of stabilize their location. So 3C, if you hit them towards you, or you hit like one of those anti-airs where they're super close, 6A also fulfills a similar role where you can immediately just jump cancel it and then go into one of her extenders and you're super A-okay. Okay, next type of move I want to talk about is extenders. So probably the single most important extender that you need to know for Tina is Fatal Eat into 3C. If you have one bar, this is like the super brain dead easy way to combo off of almost anything, right? And the reason it's brain dead easy is because it puts you in basically the same situation every time. It's very spacing independent because of that Fatal 3C covering such a huge range with the 3 pillars. And it refills your key gauge, so you don't actually need to think about your Q gauge in that case. You can just do the same route basically every time off of that. The next thing I would call an extender is her 6A. So I know I talked about it a little bit already as the stabilizer, right? What do I do after a 6A? You want to keep an eye on the combo timer, but the simple answer is... I'll put the combo notation for that on screen, but that's kind of the BMB extender. So just to give you an idea of what I'm doing, I'm launching them into the air, I'm stabilizing, and I'm trying to use as many different moves as possible to avoid repetitive penalty. So I'm using JB into J3B, and then I dash cancel J5A into J6B to avoid repetitive penalty, and then I will have to land on the ground. If I hit a different extender, like for instance, I can go into that route here, that 6A will not be repetitive penalty, but a lot of the times the way that you're getting into this situation is because you launch them a 6A, and you're just gonna have to accept that you're gonna finally hit that repetitive penalty towards the end of the combo. I'll talk about the enders a little bit more there. If you have a ton of combo time left after that 6A, you can go into another extender, or you can just go into the ender, depending on the option. Another combo extender, like very common, I talked about this, is that 3C stabilizer. As I was mentioning with 6A, the 3C stabilizer can bring you into the 6A extender, right? So you just do your route, and that makes this type of routing very spacing agnostic. Now, if you have someone in the corner, Tina has access to one of the most broken stabilizers in the game, which is 63C loops. I'm gonna go ahead and set her to 0 bar so you can just see how ridiculously much meter this generates. I'm gonna do it off a 5A starter, but you can do this kind of routing like anytime you have them in the corner. And as long as you're not in meter penalty, it's broken. So what I'm gonna do is... So there I cut it really close to the end of the combo timer, but as you can see, I just went from 0 bar at the start of the combo to 2 bar super ender. I've alluded to this before, but the way this works is when you have them in the corner and you hit a 3D or a 2D, it drops all the food in the corner, aka right on top of you. So it just immediately refills your Q gauge, right? It immediately gives you 4 stocks. So if I go to Tina's Q gauge here, and I set her to start at 0, like immediately full, and because you can loop that multiple times in the combo, every time you do that, you're eating, which means that you're generating meter, right? It's really, really strong. It requires a little bit of negative edge, but this is such an important thing to learn. Basically what you're gonna do is after your launcher, you're gonna 6A, and because 6A is so plus, you're gonna start charging that negative edge 3D, and then as soon as you release it, you're gonna go into the next move. So in this case, we're going into another 6D. So normally 3D into 6D doesn't combo, but when you negative edge it, you can basically reduce the gap between those two moves enough to make it combo. And that lets you just cycle resources in the corner. And like, it gets so much worse than the jab starter, because you might have gotten a 6E starter or something with like way more scaling. You can even, if you have them like outside the corner, like let's say they're in the corner and you hit this, right? You can like... right? And you can start going into that style of loop. Depending on the routing, you know, you can even, you know, spend less time doing other stuff and just go right into it. So it's very spacing dependent, but super ender. And either of Tina's supers is strong ender here. I'll be talking about enders a little bit later. This is absolutely one of the strongest things you can do in this game. And And if you have the option to route into this style of ender, I highly recommend going for it. It's just insane resource generation. Tina 60 actually does like a stupid amount of damage on its own. So even setting aside like, oh, I'm trying to build resources, like this is kind of a stupid combo, you know? And some of Tina's strongest like meter dump combos involve looping 60 over and over again. So it's very strong. Highly recommend. And if you're watching VODs and you see this loop, like truly look at the meter and you will understand how broken it is. Okay, last section is enders. There's a lot of different kinds of enders and different types of Oki, and it is very important to keep track of what kind of ender you want to use. So like a very typical ender, if I get to the end of the combo, is 3D into 3D. So there I'm doing that same negative edge trick where I hit my launcher. I know I have enough plus frames to charge that negative edge for a second, and then I throw out another one. And that leaves twice as much food on the ground. It gets a little bit of extra damage in. It's a very strong option, and it's one of her hard knockdown options. If you land one of these, you can also, depending on how much resources you have, go into a fireball. So if, remember, her fireballs cost 2. So if you're starting the ender at 3 pips of Q bar, you're not gonna be able to do that. But let's say you have 4, you can go, and then immediately, like if she's in the corner, you're immediately just setting the saw blade on top of her, and that's gonna meaty her. Or you can immediately put a thread out on the screen and then run behind it to collect your food super safely. If they're in the corner, the 3Ds might even give you cuteness. So if they're in the corner, I can just do this and set up like super strong Oki situations. I can do this, and I don't even need to save cuteness for the end of the combo, because I know that when they're in the corner, some of that food's gonna fall on top of me and immediately give me the resources I want, right? Like, if you see this, right, at this spacing in the corner, I'm immediately getting at least 1 back, and if I'm a little closer, I get at least 2 back. Or if I'm right on the corner, I get all 4 immediately. One of the kind of annoying things though with this type of ender is if you want to get like the poor ender, you end up in these situations where you have to be right on top of them, which can be kind of annoying because a lot of characters like Yagabi, I'm always talking about Yagabi because his defense is so good, but with Yagabi, you really don't want to be waking up right next to him, because then you have to do the pressure that causes you to be right next to him, which leaves you vulnerable to his DP and his stupid fatal options and many other ridiculous things that Yagabi has access to. So it's just something to take note of. Definitely that 2D ender is her most common ender. Depending on the situation, like I said, if you're low on resources, 60 enders can be super strong, and air throw enders can be super strong. So air throw is like ridiculously plus. See, plus 77 air throw ender. It's like the most plus you can be. It doesn't put them at the best spacing mid screen, but like back to the corner, that's the ender you want, you know? Throw them into the corner. It also doesn't cost any resources. It's definitely a strong option, and against certain characters, like, you might choose instead of Oki to just want to reset to neutral. So even mid-screen, you can find yourself like throw them, eat up, meaty them with 6C, right? So it's important to note, like, because 6C is like such a ridiculously strong meaty option, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not getting Fireball Oki, like I'm not setting a Saw Blade on top of them mid-screen, I'm still getting a meaty off of them. So very strong option. 6D. This one you really only want to use because you have no resources. So this is one of those right? You're plus enough to eat. Depending on the range, you might be able to threaten them with a meaty. But this is one of those things that you rarely are going to use outside of round start. Super enders. So Tina has 2 supers. They're both strong combo enders. First one, oh, let me set her meter. First one, 2 and 4D. First of all, plus 50 hard knockdown. And it just sets up Oki for you for free, and it's some of the most like oppressive projectile Oki that you can have, because it doesn't go away even if your opponent hits Tina. So you still need to be a little bit worried, because like if I throw this out, my opponent just wakes up with a fatal dash, they can leave the projectile field and not be threatened by it. But I also have enough time to kind of run at them, you know? And so I can just like... That's now very hard for them to deal with when I'm just sitting there at that range, because even if they mash on wake up and successfully hit me, I'm just gonna get combo break from my super combo breaking me. So I would say if you're choosing between super enders and you know that the other super isn't gonna kill, this one's kind of your Oki super, okay? The other super, and this is the damage super, is 236D. You may have noticed that beam stayed out for a really long time. The way that 236D works is it spends the entire remaining amount of Tina's Q gauge and just turns that into raw damage. So this is like an insane damage ender for those corner loop combos, right? Just to give you an idea. Now, one of the weird, annoying things about this move is it actually whiffs at complete point blank range. So when you're using it as a combo ender in these corner loops, you may be doing the trick where you hold the dash button to advance forward during the route. If you do, you're going to be standing as close to them as possible, and your 236D will actually whiff. There's a very easy way to get around it, which is you need to walk back for 1 frame. You literally can't even see it, but instead of going for... instead of just going directly into the ender, you can literally just hold back for a frame and basically go back and then 260. I'll show it right here. So there, you literally can't even see her going back, but if you look at the input display, I held back for 1 frame, or actually a few frames, but I was able to just go backward a tiny little bit. The other thing is, if you just like let go of that dash button, so let's say you're holding the dash button to go at them, you know, to stay close to them, and you just let go at the end, you will stop getting as close to them, and that's another easy way to set it up. So it's really just a preference thing between which of those 2 ways, but for damage enders, it's very strong. If you also have 3 bars, or if you just have 2 bars at the end of your combo mid-screen, well, I would say 3 bars. It's a very strong little combo ender because you can immediately refill your gauge with Fatal Eat into 3C, and then just combo that directly into 260. So, like, even setting aside, like, let's say I do this kind of long combo, little 3-bar ender, and my little 6C combo, like, did 6k. It's very strong, but it's only strong when you have full Q bar. So generally you want to use it with the tools that let you refill your Q bar mid combo, aka 3D, Fatal 214A. Last thing I want to talk about is Oki setups. So, basically in terms of Oki tools, you're looking at 236A, meaty 6C, or meaty J6C, and 236C. Now, of these, the easiest one to set up is that 236A, right? Like any combo ender you have going, if you have the right amount of resources, just go into your 2D setup, throw out a 2d6A, the fireball will melee them on wake up, and then as soon as they block it, because that's how you know they didn't DP, that's when you eat and then extend your pressure. It's super plus on block. You're very happy with that. But a lot of the times you would rather have this 2-3-6 Ender. The reason is because it advances slower, you get more time to kind of do things and create pressure, and it is easier to pressure them from different spacings when you have this out. So especially against Yagami, I think this is like a very strong option. For those of you who know Yagami, you know that it's very hard to do Oki setups on him because of the options that he has. You can throw this out and then pressure him from outside his DP range, which significantly improves your chances of getting favorable enders. So that's like a little bit hard to set up sometimes. I'll kind of show one of the setups I labbed recently, but basically it's you use 3C to push them out of the corner, and then you chase them out of the corner. Let me try that again. So that style of Ender, you basically side switch mid combo to pull them back out of the corner, and then you do your air throw Ender into 2-3-6C. It's kind of niche, and I don't recommend ever doing this against an opponent with burst because they can just burst you into the corner. But it gives you the advantage of going into the corner, using 3D to refill your key bar, and then pulling them out of the corner so that you get the strong 2-3-6C Oki where you're not right on top of them. It's kind of niche. I think it is definitely worth going for in some situations. And on that note, I know I've already mentioned this. If you just happen to have the cuteness, like air throw Ender into 2-3-6C is super solid, and at different spacings you can get different things out of it. Worth noting, Tina's Sean Hole hits really far below where it looks, so you can absolutely like meaty people or lock people down from much higher in the air than you'd think. And it's very strong because that's also a little bit harder for them to jump over if they want to go that route to avoid it. Anyway, I highly recommend experimenting a little bit with Tina's combo theory. Once you start to kind of understand how her moves chain together, you can get a little bit more creative with it. I'm just gonna go on to the example combo section, so probably no commentary, just combos and combo notation on screen. But the first combo I'm gonna show here before I cut to that is Tina's B&B. I know we're like 30 minutes into the combo section, and I'm now showing you her first B&B. This is the most important combo. I highly recommend learning it, and everything else you can kind of experiment around with yourself. Try the combo trials. A lot of the combos I helped create when Free was asking in the Discord, but here we go. Here's the combo. So there, I just did a little Oki setup to kind of show you what you can do at the end, but that 2D Ender is the real thing that you care the most about. The reason I recommend this as the B&B is it's super stable as long as you have one bar. You just need to modify the spacing a little teensy bit depending on where you are. Like there, I didn't need the additional 2C, but if I'm further away, I might need the 2C to get me there. Super strong little combo, and if you have a bar, it doesn't make you care about how much cuteness you have. So it's very stable, very easy to start to rely on, and if your meter management is good, maybe you just always have the 1 meter you need whenever you land the combo starter. I'm going to wrap up with some more kind of example combos. I'm gonna only put stuff that in my mind is what I consider tournament viable combos in the video, and I'm just gonna shut up for the rest of the video.
私はそんな